I hope everybody had a Merry Christmas, and certainly I hope everyone has a Happy New Year. I'm going to go over some of Joe Biden's last ditch effort before he leaves office as the lame duck that he is. I found this transcript. I got a transcript of Ben Ferguson. I thought was really good. Well, if you needed another reason to be thankful that you voted for Donald Trump over Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, well, to look no further than their decision to spare the lives of some of the worst criminals on death row with federal crimes. It's unbelievable. We're talking about people that have slit the throats of children, executed 2 and 3 year olds, riddled their bodies with bullets. Someone kidnapped a 12-year-old, killed her mother in front of the 12-year-old, and then slit the throat of the 12-year-old. Now, he has commuted the sentence of like 39. Now there's a total of 1,500 people that he's done this to, done this for rather. And I don't think we're being too graphic. I'm actually telling you the crimes that were committed by these individuals who Joe Biden decided to commute their sentences. Now let's also be clear here. Joe Biden, I'm not even sure knows what's going on. He doesn't even know who's running the country. I mean, who is running the country, people? I think we all know this, and this is the question now becomes like, who's running the country and how long has the country been run by someone that was likened by no one? From what we're now gathering, apparently, the entire time he's been in cognitive decline since he got to the White House to be the president. So he's not been running the country. So this begs the question, right? That we've all been asking ourselves. Now, what did Joe Biden actually think if Joe Biden was of sound mind about the death penalty? Yeah, what would he think about it? I can actually tell you not because I can read Joe Biden's mind, but because I can go back and play the tapes. This is Joe Biden in the U.S. Senate, July the 22nd of 1994. When he was in the Senate of sound mind and body, so to speak. But he's always been the gaffer, right? At the time, he was the senior senator for Delaware. He's a Democrat, and this is what he had to say about the death penalty in 94, when clearly he was in charge of his own mind. I'm a death penalty supporter, Joe Biden says. I'm the guy that wrote this bill. Presumptuous thing to say, isn't it? But I wrote this bill with my own little hands, and I added into the bill more than 50 death penalties. I supported the death penalty. This president supports the death penalty. And who was the president at the time? I support the death penalty. I wrote it. The president supports the death penalty. I'm a death penalty supporter. His exact words. I'm the guy that wrote this bill. I wrote it all by my lonesome, he says. Who was the president? Y'all remember back then. It was Bill Clinton. Now, Joe Biden then was that. I want to be clear. He was on his A game. And I'm not saying he's like his politics, but he was clearly on his A game at the time, I guess, as far as if we want to say that he's on his A game. Oh my gosh. Then he was on, he understood his A game and what he stood for. And he would tell you what he stood for. And it was very, very clear what he stood for. And he wrote it in there, not once, but 50 times, what he was in favor of with the death penalty. What changed? Number one, I think Joe Biden's no longer in charge based on what we've been told. I don't think he's been in charge for a very long time based on what we've seen, what we've heard, all the video footage we've seen for the past year. It's unbelievable. Joe Biden's massive cognitive decline has been just blatantly obvious. and that it's been a cover up, probably since the time he was elected, just shortly after. I mean, it was obviously a slow decline. Biden's nap quote took precedent over meetings with Gold Star families. This was from a bombshell Wall Street Journal story. And finally, the New York Times is now coming out admitting that Biden was old and there's been major problems with Joe Biden, the biggest political scandal, I would argue, ever more than Watergate right now, more than the Pentagon Papers. Well, I don't think the media is acting like that it is the biggest scandal since Watergate. Because according to Joe Scarborough, he was the sharpest tool in the shed, and that he's on his A game. According to Kamala Harris, oh, he's just sharp as a whip in all the meetings, and this is the stuff we heard until the debate, and then everything came out. It's unbelievable. The biggest political scandal ever, certainly in my lifetime, that we had a president of the United States of America right now that is not in charge. Well, we've been saying it for a long time. We've been saying it for a long time. Been incapable the entire time he has been commander in chief. The New York Post article on this, even more damning, Sleepy Joe forced grieving military families to wait hours while he napped on Air Force One. Is the new shocking story from President Biden. That is unbelievable. He's sleeping. Wow. The reporting says from Force One. Grieving relatives of Marines killed in Afghanistan will wait for hours while he napped on Air Force One. Multiple family members have said to the New York Post in August of 2028 Taliban terrorists killed 13 American soldiers and more than 170 Afghans at the Kalaba International Airport at the Ivy Gate in Afghanistan. We all know about that disastrous pullout because of what he wanted, a ceremonious moment where he says he ended America's longest war. And we all know it was just a disaster. The attack came during unbelievable. The final days of the Kodiak American withdrawal from the country, we were taking orders from terrorists, even though we didn't have to. Biden's reported nap took place during a dignified transfer ceremony when the presidential first lady Joe Biden were to welcome the caskets of the fallen soldiers at Doe Force Base in Delaware. Well, maybe his wife is running the country. I just maybe it's his wife. I don't know because we know Kamala Harris is just a word salad. How can she run anything? The leader's decision to snooze on the tarmac instead of greeting them was an insult to the memories of their loved ones. Biden made us wait an extra 3 hours to receive the bodies of our dead family members because he couldn't pull it together, is what Royce McCullen told the Daily Mail. McCullen's brother Riley was killed in the airport massacre. A military officer told her Biden was snoozing on the plane. The account was additionally, and again, it's amazing how this reporting comes out now, but then when he was running for reelection, right, the account was additionally, my bad, confirmed by Darren Hoover, the father of Staff Sergeant Tyler Hoover, and Christy Shellen, the mother and the mother-in-law of the Marine Sergeant Nicole Gree. Both soldiers were killed in the explosion at the airport. And that was a quote. We sat in the office for what seemed like an eternity waiting on this. It's just unbelievable. It's just unbelievable. So we don't know who's running the country, who's making these pardons. Biden said years ago, 94, that he was for the death penalty. Now he took all these people off the death penalty, commuted their sentences to life in prison. It's just it's unbelievable. It is unbelievable. And look at this. Let's take a look at this. We're going to read this last part. This is just a couple of the. I did a video on this on a judge in Pennsylvania for Cash for Kids, and it's a documentary. I can link it in the description. I advise you to go see it, recommend it rather, to go and look at it and get a background of what these parents and these children went through from this judge here. Former Pennsylvania Judge Michael McCullen. In 2011, Cullen and another judge were convicted for wrongfully sending juveniles to for profit detention centers in exchange for millions of dollars in illegal kickbacks. Now, the video, the documentary is showing that the judge and this other judge had a an acquaintance, I guess. Cohen had an acquaintance, or the other judge had an acquaintance that had a construction company, and he bidded on building. He won a bid on building a new juvenile detention center. So this judge and the other guy gets like over $2 million kickback. So he wasn't actually, I don't believe in the documentary it says he was actually convicted for getting money for the kids. He was convicted because he didn't claim the money, he didn't pay taxes on it. So there was a conspiracy charges that were dropped and some other charges, but he ended up getting like 15 to 25 years on what he was charged from. But the appearance and the propriety of what he did, it seemed that way, and everybody thought that way, and all the local people said that he just did this for the money to fill up these detention centers. For thousands of juveniles convicted were later thrown out after the Kids for Cash scheme was exposed. Cohen's 17-year prison sentence was due to the end in 2026, and he had been serving that sentence under home confinement since 2020. Wow, so he got to go home for a little bit. What about those kids that, what drives me nuts is the kids that he sent away. He didn't let them go to home confinement. He just kept and some of those kids off themselves in real life, and the parents are devastated. And a lot of these kids have PTSD, all kinds of uh, depression problems because they were locked up. And these were actually decent kids. Like one girl, she just got in a fight. Remember back in the day, some kids get in a fight, you just get suspended from school. Maybe your parents ground you. Then you go back to school. No, 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 no. They threw her in a detention center for months for fighting. It was ridiculous. So in 2026, so he was confined since 2020. Sandy Franzone, whose son died by suicide after being sent to the juvenile detention center, called Biden's communicative deadly painful. That he commuted this guy's sentence. That this guy should have served out his whole time. Probably should have served more. Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro publicly criticized Biden as well. I do feel strongly that the President Biden got it absolutely wrong and created a lot of pain here in the northeastern Pennsylvania, Shapiro said. Cohen deserves to be behind bars, not walking out as a free man. And I agree because I know a lot of those kids, if y'all watch that documentary, they got coerced and their parents to sign a waiver for these children not to have an attorney. And we're talking close to 3,000 kids. 3,000 kids that went through this judge's courtroom, and masses of them went. At least three, I think it was about 3,000 of them ended up having to go to these juvenile detention centers. And basically for minor offenses. And here we got Paul Dongodas, a notorious tax cheat. I'm not sure how to say his name. A former law partner of Illinois' Paul was convicted of overseeing fraudulent tax shelters at a cost to the government of more than 1.6 billion. The scheme generated over 7 billion of fraudulent uh, doctrines, according to the prosecutors. His law firm agreed to pay 76 million penalty. Well, isn't that special? Prosecutors called Dungaris the most prolific, perilous, and utterly unrepentant tax cheat in United States history. Throw the book at him, tar and feather him, run him out of town. Wow. While a judge described the case as the biggest tax fraud prosecution ever, according to Forbes, he was sentenced to 15 years in prison in 2014. Biden commuted his sentence. Now, do you think a peon like the rest of us embezzled $1 billion? They'd probably throw us in jail forever. They'd throw us in jail forever. But Biden pardoned this guy. Jim Carson, who ran a synthetic drug ring in Minnesota. Minnesota Senator Amy Klobuchar said Sunday that she was sure some of the commutatives were deserved, but there were a number that I think make no sense at all after referencing Carlson's case. Here's the Star Tribune's summary of his case. Now, this is insane. Jim Carlson, a head shop owner, found guilty in 2013 on dozens of felony charges after experts say he sold enough synthetic drugs to cause a public health crisis in Duluth. Had his sentence commuted Thursday as one of the nearly 1,500 convicted criminals granted clemency by President Joe Biden. Carlson received a 17-and-a-half-year sentence after a jury found him guilty on 51 out of 55 felony counts for selling synthetic drugs from his store in downtown Duluth. Prosecutors allege Carlson sold synthetic drugs that were misbranded and as incense, potpourri, bath salts, and glass cleaner, while using employees as guinea pigs to test how the unregulated drugs would work on the customers. This is insane. This is just insane. Well, concluding, he's a lame duck. He commuted the sentences of nearly of all federal prisoners on death row. Biden has pardoned his son, as well as dozens of other people convicted of non-violent crimes, and he has commuted the sentences of nearly 1,500 non-violent crimes who had been moved to home confinement during the COVID pandemic. More pardons and commutes are expected. Now, it's also possible that Biden will promptly pardon government officials whom incoming President Donald Trump has vowed to retaliate against. And criminal justice activists are pushing for Biden to protect others as well. And we've read what was below. Now, what gets me is that this article is saying they were non-violent crimes. So this guy at this head shop selling synthetic drugs that says could cause a health problem in the community. Oh, no, that's nonviolent. Well, people could die. People could take these things and get addicted, and now it's ruined their life. But no, no, no. This is a nonviolent criminals. Plus, he's commuted the sentence of these people receiving the death penalty, and y'all heard in the article earlier that he was for the death penalty. So, I, what's going on? Who's running the country? Because he years back in the 90s, he says he's for the death penalty. He wrote all these laws, and then now, fast forward, he's pardoned all these people that needed to be executed. They were found guilty. They needed to be for heinous crimes. So, did he do this, or is somebody else doing this? And the beg the question, why? Why 1,500 people? Now, every president gets to pardon people at the end of their term, but this is extreme and over the top of what he's done. So I don't think he did it. I think somebody else is pulling the somebody else is the puppet master. Let me know in the comments, who do you think did this, and why would they commute these criminals sentences, and what's going on with the judges in Pennsylvania? Is he buddies with them or buddies with his wife or somebody in their family? Uh, who who's pardoning these people? And there you have it.